All right, everyone, it's the top of the hour. Thanks for joining us for this week's Tech Tuesday from Vic Myers Associates. This week in partnership with Hawk. Hawk has recently merged with Flowcorp, so that's why you see that logo on there. My name is Ryan Christian. I'll be our moderator today. And just a couple housekeeping items to get us started. First, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A section or the comment box. We're happy to answer those questions at the end of the presentation. We'll send out a link to all attendees to share this video with your colleagues or perhaps to review it again at a later date. And you can also see this content and more on our website at www.vicmyers.com. Today, our topic is fundamentals of remote asset monitoring for industrial applications. And today's topic is presented by our panelist, Dave Grumney of VP Sales, who is VP of Sales for Hawk Measurement. Although Dave is not new to Hawk, he is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to instrumentation for industrial process control. With over 30 years in the industry, Dave has brought a collection of experiences with him to help our customers be successful, and for that we're grateful. Here's a fun fact that we just learned about Dave recently. He grew up with the dream of becoming a radio DJ host and a professional golfer. In college, he played on the golf team while working at the college radio station as a student DJ. His dreams fell short and he only plays golf occasionally, and he never really ended up becoming a professional DJ. Well, Dave, today you are DJ Dave. And from all of us from the Vic Myers team and our local customers, thank you for our time, being willing to share your expertise today. We really appreciate you. I'm going to unmute you now, make you the presenter, and you can take it away, DJ Dave.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ryan. And thank you all for coming and taking this time to learn a little bit more about remote monitoring. And in our remote monitoring webinar, there has been a lot of development in remote monitoring over the past few years, and so this is a good time to just have a conversation about where the market has been, where it is now, and where it's going. And so I just wanted to mention, though, that with all the social distancing, everything that has been happening over the past few months, it has made relative change and a shift in our markets. We've seen it. We felt it, and I think we're also glad that we're going to be coming out of it, getting back to somewhat normal. But it has revealed a lot to us, and one of the things it has revealed is that in the workplace, in our processes that happen within the workplace, whether it's out at the production floor or up in the front office or for our forward-facing people, the data that we measure and collect is something that's really required in industry now. In fact, in March, a detailed survey was conducted to identify the usages and the trends of things like temperature, level, pressure, flow devices, in general, field devices that we make to measure our processes, and how that monitoring and communication was being utilized in process automation. And we found that 72% of the respondents that use field devices connect their field devices to HART transmitters, their HART field devices. Less than 1% connect their field devices to Ethernet, although 50% of their field devices come equipped with Ethernet communications. 32% expect to purchase wireless field instruments over the next 12 to 18 months, and all of these numbers are going to nearly double over the next year. Why? Well, because since mid-March, everything changed. Remote monitoring is currently and will be for the next foreseeable future the hottest growth market within the instrument market. It has an over 40% annual growth rate in 2019, and it has a projected over 40% growth rate in 2020. So year over year, we're seeing phenomenal growth. in this market, this emerging market called remote monitoring. And so what we're going to be doing in this session is having a conversation about monitoring field devices in process plants, what to consider when designing a wireless remote monitoring system, what to consider when designing an in-plant network with remote cloud-based web portal interfaces, what to consider considerations should be made for field instruments as you're considering to purchase field instruments in the near future. What kind of designs would you need for that? So Hawk Measurement provides those solutions for the field instrument, for monitoring, for things like monitoring flow in a process pipe, whether it be a gas or a liquid, or monitoring level in a tank, or a fiber optic sensing process for any application, and many other types of field devices. So one of the nice things that Hawk brings to the table, along with FlowCorp, is that Hawk is one of the only providers of the field instrument, as well as a standalone wireless or wired remote monitoring system as well. It's a very unique combination. So hopefully you can all see my screen. We're just going to dig into the monitoring aspects of our presentation. And so Ryan, were you able to see the screen?
It looks great, Dave.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. So the wired and wireless monitors begins with a platform, and it has to be a very flexible platform, because I had mentioned earlier the platform has to be sensor agnostic. We have to have the ability to connect and communicate with any field device you may currently have in the field, as well as design a field sensor that will have the ability to communicate in the future as well. So the platform, the monitor that we use, is an Ethernet-based platform. It's serially connected via RS-45. Modbus is the standard serial interface that we use for this connectivity. That all sounds very technical and very sophisticated, but it basically is just a data highway, with Modbus being the language that we communicate within that data highway, that will allow us to communicate with many other devices, whether they be 4 to 20 milliamp analog devices, or 0 to 10 volt analog devices, whether they just connect with on-off auxiliary relays, things like that. We need something that's going to be very flexible, that can be configured over any serial device or analog loop that you would have in your field. So this hardware gives us the ability to do that. The hardware has the ability then to connect to your area-wide network within the plant, either wired via Cat5 or Cat6 cable, or wireless through a Wi-Fi network. We have the ability to connect this device to a cellular uplink, which would require no internal communication ability, but just external from the monitor up to through a cell tower, and then up to the cloud, where we have a remote server that collects data, and then you can monitor your data, which we'll take a look at actually as we log into what a typical, or at least our typical web portal would look like. The platform is all DIN rail configured, so you can use any number of modules to connect any number of field inputs to any monitoring system. That's one of the things when you're designing a monitoring system is very important. How flexible is it? Can I connect literally to any device? Are there only certain select devices? that I can communicate to. And of course, one of the considerations you want to make in designing a system is, can I have the ability to connect to literally any device, whether it's already existing, may not have been already designed for data collection and data uplink. But if I could use those field devices to bring into my monitoring system, then I won't be required to go out and buy or purchase any sophisticated or selected types of field devices. I could literally bring either a wired or wireless signal input. I could download the data, manage the data either remotely or locally or both, through a network server within your plant, or the modules that come equipped within the CONNEX platform. Anyway, I'm not sure of any other modular devices that are like this, but Hawk makes a modular device that'll literally communicate with any number of other devices, including our own. This includes local display monitoring. One of the things that had been left out of the market, at least we felt, is that, it's nice to be able to collect the data and then to remotely transmit the data, let's say to the cloud, or even remotely transmit it to our internetwork, so accounting can actually see the data on their PCs, or our executive level personnel can see all of our assets and monitoring data on their PCs. But what about the local plant operators? Do we have to then do something different for them? So one of the nice features of the CONNEX system is it allows the remote plant operation to see their data. And it also allows the data to be manipulated and transmitted for any of our executive level staff as well. So they're all being all the data is being manipulated, stored, and then transmitted, depending on user use. There's different modules that usually come with a system. They could be relay modules, because one of the things that you may want to do with a remote monitoring system is then do some local alarming as well, or maybe even simply just turn a pump on or off. So don't necessarily want to get involved with a lot of sophisticated control. Normally we have a PLC system that does that, but maybe just some simple on-off and maybe some simple pump control, that kind of thing. We could do that within the system that communicates, again, all serially within the network. So it's a completely integrated system that will connect to multiple field devices, all being multiplexed into one system that has a single or multiple avenues of communication output. One of the things that we saw lacking within the remote monitoring world was if we wanted to purchase a system to connect to a remote tank site, it only had the ability to bring 4 to 20 milliamps in, and it only had the ability to link the data to a cell tower for one tank. So for every tank that I had, I would have to buy a data plan, or a SIM card, if you would, in order to uplink the data to a cloud-based platform. Well, that works okay if you have one tank and your tank level system only has an analog output. But what happens if you have multiple tanks in a local area that communicates in multiple different fashions? Some with 4 to 20, some with Ethernet, some with RS-485 serial communications to it for my level devices. And so we made a system that actually will integrate all of your tanks within the tank farm into one data plan, communicating to a host of different types of communication. The web portal we keep referring to looks somewhat like this. This is the typical dashboard of our web portal. It gives you a geographic location of where your tanks may be. You can drill down into the location or to the site. And any of these devices can then connect to that site. Just scroll back there for a minute and we'll go to that site in a second. The next page on the site, you may want to see some historical data, maybe some inventory use, and you may want to be able to configure that to read out in units of measure that make sense to you, whether it be tons or gallons or percent, that kind of thing. And again, we'll get into the live site in a moment, but before we do, the hardware, you may wonder, well, what is he talking about, this hardware, and how does it all wire in, and how it, can understand how it can be remote monitored. But the hardware is very flexible as well. So you can mount any of the modules, any of the hardware within your own environment, your own electrical control panels, or in a standard enclosure. We have a closure that's made for us that will accommodate generally about 8 inputs per system. Or we also have communication systems embedded directly within the transmitters, the field devices themselves. So what the system would look like is, we'll just take tank level for a simple application. If we have remote tanks or local tanks within the plant, if we want to connect directly up to the field instrument, that connect directly power over Ethernet to a switch, goes through a router. It could connect to your PLCs as well as to your office executive level personnel, or in a control room. And that information then can be routed, obviously through a firewall, and up to the cloud as well, where again, anyone from headquarters at your customer site can gather the data and present the data, analyze the data, and so on. The data can also be shared with Hawk, where we can, via remote login to the data, be able to configure the devices on field commissioning, or even take a look at any of the field devices if you have any question as to the validity of the data. We can actually go in and make a diagnostic check. We can actually set up any of those tank level devices for, to a strapping chart again, so you could read the actual volumes or mass if you want to read in tons, making those conversions remotely and then downloading it into the field device. Like I said, we can make any diagnostic or corrective action without ever entering the plant. We did this with a lot of social distancing in mind. So it's, again, with the last few months have been crazy for us, because we've had so many people contacting us saying, hey, we have these field devices. We don't have the people in the field anymore in order to write down the measurements of those field devices that we definitely need, whether it's for asset protection, inventories, things like that, or safety ability that we have within the plant. We have no way to monitor any of that. Now we have the ability to even remotely log in to any of those devices for any commissioning or diagnosis for corrective action on the field devices. We do this in many cases that this two-way communication is through this field device that I called Power over Ethernet. So this particular device is manufactured by Hawk. It's the first Power over Ethernet transmitters for field devices on level that are on the market today. They're simple, cost-effective wiring, so there's no more pulling multiple pairs of wires up to a field device or up on top of a tank. We can actually just connect up to Cat5, Cat6 cable into any one of the devices. These devices have the ability for multiple communication port outputs. So we can communicate TCP/IP through our monitoring system, or we can connect Modbus RTU through, so it is its own remote terminal unit. And that communication output happens simultaneously with the communication of TCP/IP. So now I can go one way and communicate to our Rockwell PLC or controller or any number of different types of controllers, or I can communicate and at the same time communicate to a remote monitoring system, or I can communicate Modbus for remote diagnostics into a Modbus reader software. This is a short video. I don't think we'll spend time. It shows you how to connect a Cat5 cable, and honestly, most of us, I'm pretty sure, know how to do that. All of these different types of sensors are capable with and can come provisioned with Modbus power over Ethernet. So the remote diagnostics and historical service records can be kept with any of these devices to provide a whole plant-wide system of preventive maintenance. They all can be remotely logged in through any field device or smart device, whether it's a PC or a handheld device or a tablet or an iPad. One of the things that Hawk is doing through this season of the pandemic is we are giving a free 1-year data plan for every device that would need a data plan to get you up and running, so you can actually monitor your devices remotely and safely. So we're going to log into to the CONNEX portal just so you can see what a typical dashboard would look like. You could see any number of plants within the dashboard, and just by clicking on any one of these tanks, you can actually see what the individual tank data looks like. You can actually check and see what your true voltage is, that your network is correct. This particular one will give you the exact location, detail, and current capacity and so on of the tank, as well as the head space or the airspace within the tank. You could drill down in any number of these tanks just to see what your historical inventory is. If you want to kind of scroll back and take a look at a longer length of history, this one, it looks like it could be 30 days of history. You can see where this tank is drawing down. They fill up, draw down, and fill up, and so on. And you can just get a logged data of every one of your tanks, and you can also download the data into a CSV file for historical trending. The inventories, like I say, they're very user selectable and just super easy to operate. You can just go into tank edit. You can go in and fill in as much data as you want to see. You can get as granular as you'd like. You can tell if it normally fills or it normally empties. You can get alarms for remote emails and SMS texting. So you can always stay connected with your assets or your tanks or your alarm situation without actually having to be logged in. You can you'd be able to receive that remote data through your smartphone or smart device. Going back to the geographical map, you can see if you had tanks, if you're a chemical distributor, and even though you're located in Arizona, you have tanks in Colorado or California, it would just be a matter of clicking on that state. You can actually see where all your tanks are and go down and drill down to any one of them, either through the bar graph displays or through the general map and the widgets for the tank inventory status. So that is what a typical dashboard in user pages would look like on a remote web portal. That remote web portal again is measuring a whole host of field devices that are collecting and managing the data for you. And the way you would get into this is via a secure web portal password and login information. So only you can see your data. And with that, again, just want to remind you that we're giving away free data plans. So for this year, if you're looking to get into this remote monitoring, or you just have questions, that kind of thing, just contact Ryan or the folks at Vic Myers, and they will get you connected. And with that, Ryan, I will turn this back over to you.
Thanks so much, Dave. Appreciate that. I will give it just a few minutes here for questions to come in. I've got a couple here so far, but I'm just going to give it a few seconds, Dave, and we'll go ahead and get started with our Q&A session just here in a moment.
Okay, that would be great.
Well, the first one is just on the heels of what you were just talking about, security. Can you talk more about how the data is secured, or how security works?
Fantastic. Well, the data, we'll start at implant. In the implant data, it is the software that monitors the implant data from Hawk is all encrypted software. So even when we start to collect and gather the data, we're talking about encrypted data. Data that even if somebody should hack into a local network wouldn't be able to figure out, because the data actually comes in packets, or we call sockets. So it's typically used in the networking world. It's data that is sparsed out in these sockets and then collected and reassembled when it gets back into the local area network. And then we do something a bit different when we transport the data up to the cloud. Now, transporting data remotely to a cloud server first requires a robust and hardened remote cloud-based server. So you wouldn't want to stick it in your closet and things that some folks have done in the past. So we actually use Yahoo. We still use a Yahoo remote server. It's a very robust server. Many in heavy industry, in banking, and defense use servers either the same or like, and that server is very robust and secure in itself. We have multiple firewalls and so on. But the data collection remotely, whether it's through a cell tower, is also secured. Or whether we're uplinking directly on the internet. So, which is another way that we get data up to the remote server. So we have the ability to do either or. We've had customers in the past. We've been in this field for over 10 years, and we've had large corporates. One of the largest corporations in the world uses our systems to get data into Bentonville. And they do the same thing. It's just been secured enough to a point where you can't call into the device, but we can always transmit data out. And so we have data flowing just in one direction. But for the actual user itself, you would get your own login credentials. So again, you'd only be able to see your data. Now you could take your data and share it with others. For instance, if I'm a manufacturer of chemicals and I have a distribution source that distributes my chemicals to multiple end users, then I might want the end user to be able to see the data from my remote tanks. as a verification that I'm going to come out to deliver, to refill, to replenish the tank, also that you've used X amount of material. So I have the ability to do that and just share with them data from their particular tank, not all my other customers' tanks.
Very good. That's a great breakdown. Another question here. What other countries or where outside of the US can we actually use this data plan?
Great. The data, it's up on the internet that we transmit via the World Wide Web is available through most countries, not any country. There are some countries like China that won't allow this type of data collection and sharing, but for most of the countries that we deal in, the internet will provide them the ability to collect, store, and transmit and view the data. In terms of our remote wireless cell monitoring data, we use it's a modem that requires either a 2G or 3G network, which there are actually some countries that are still on 2G or 3G network, or a 3G, 4G network, or are now have the ability for a 5G LTE cellular network. So we have a smart modem that will communicate in any one of those networks, and it is compliant for all commercial codes as well.
Very good. What's the maximum number of field devices you can monitor with a single data plan? You mentioned only having to use one plan. Is
Right.
there a limit to how many endpoints you can have?
Yeah, that's a good question. The only limit is on how long you want the cell call to be if you are on a cellular network. Obviously, the more information you gather which would be the more inputs you have means more information you're gathering, the longer the transmission time of that gathered data is going to take to be transmitted. Practically speaking, you'd be able to monitor 100, 150 devices if you're collecting data and storing and transmitting the data, let's say every once a half hour, once an hour, and then your phone call will be um, 15 minutes, and then you'll hang up, wait 15 minutes, and then make another 15-minute phone call to download more data. So generally, it's about 100 field devices or so, but it really all depends on how often you want to collect the data, what type of data it is.
Very good. One follow-up question from the last question regarding the data plan. Can you actually upgrade a network from 3G to 5G, or how would a customer who today has 3G but maybe wants to change down the road and they have your product, what would that look like?
That would look like a simple modem upgrade where we swap the old modem out to a new modem, to the new universal modem, and then that's done regularly. We have several customers that are still on our old 2G modems that haven't upgraded for the last couple of years. You haven't been able to log on with the 2G modem into the US cellular networks for a while. But even we've taken in even some of the old 2G networks in because it's a very simple changeover. It's a small little board change out.
Okay, great. One of the last questions I have on the list is regarding, again, security, sort of. You mentioned the manufacturer having access to the data or the connection. How do you secure the data? Is that a permission that's granted by the end user, or how is that set up from the factory?
The factory stores and logs the data. We don't use the data or sell the data, or what you might hear is called monetize the data. So while the factory stores the data, we only do it for diagnostics reasons. As you can imagine, if you had a system with, let's say this remote tanks again, and you were having difficulty logging in to see the data yourself, or maybe one of your customers called and said they weren't able to log in, you'd be able to contact us either by email, text, or phone. Say, I can't log into my data. Here is my site information. And that way, the factory or our technicians here would be able to help diagnose what the issue is. And so that's the only way or mode that we ever go in and actually look at the data or see the data or see your tank levels in that case. But they are totally secured with up in into the remote server. Otherwise, yeah, we don't use the data. I hope that kind of maybe answered your question. We use it just for diagnostics only.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Last question here, and then we'll wrap it up, is regarding your portal there. Is there a demo portal for public viewing? Any sort of link that we could give out?
There is, yeah,
Okay.
there is a demo. In fact, it's not there. There's the demo version you can get through your representative or your rep channel. We'd be able to get that through. If you're logging in there remotely, you can either contact Vic Myers or you can contact Hawk, and we'd be able to get it to you.
Okay, great. Very good. Well, once again, Dave, thanks for your time helping us get up to speed on remote monitoring. It seems like everything we're doing is remote these days, so it makes sense that the market is shifting, and we appreciate you taking the time to help us with such a timely topic.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this version of Tech Tuesday. We really appreciate your time and look forward to connecting with you soon. Have a great day.